If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syyaa, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bytes podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bytes. I'm Ben, and this is Syyaa. This week I want to talk about the value of healthy conflict. Conflict has become a dirty word. It has absolutely become a dirty word. It's basically, we can't we can't have conflict in the workplace. We can't have conflict at school. We can't have conflict at home. We have to sit there and everybody has to, step on our toes, step on our own toes. Don't step on somebody else's. But I think if we can get beyond that, if we can sit there and say, you know what, we have to get out of groupthink mode. We have to stop thinking that everybody thinks the same way we do. Everybody acts and reacts the same way that we do. Everybody communicates the same way we do, because we don't. We all are human beings, and we act, react, think, emote differently. And we believe different things, and we should believe different things, because none of us comes to the world and comes to the place we are from the exact same place. My history is different from Syyaa's, different from my brother's. And just because we were raised in the same family doesn't mean we have the same exact experience. And we need to realize that those differences in the experience is what makes the world richer. And sometimes that means saying, you know what, I disagree with you. I don't believe that you're right. Or I actually think, hey, listen, here's another way of looking at this. It's not attacking people. It's about questioning ideas in a way that is going to make the ideas better and to raise the conversation in a way where we all become better in the end. And I think we need to gnaw on this. Let's go, Syyaa.
So you remind me of some posts that I've seen a while back. I have to give Leslie Neidick a shout out. Thank you. She's always supportive, and she is the conflict strategist. So she lives it all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And she made a comment in a post, like I'd mentioned, about conflict being good for business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, it is. And if you have conflict and resolve it in a healthy way.
Yes.
And the reason why I say it's good, and by the way, this is coming from someone that hates conflict. I would just want everyone to live in, butterflies and unicorn world. Okay. Why can't we just be friends? But I also understand from a competition perspective, the best sports teams are the ones where the teammates challenge each other so that everyone rises to the occasion. In the military, they're pushing you to be an individual contributor, but being the best who you can be, because when you do that collectiveness, the whole entire platoon, squad elevates themselves. Conflict, if it's done well, intentionally healthy to better the team, I think is amazing. Conflict for the sake of breaking down and a person or a team's values, their way they view themselves, that is a problem. And so I want to make sure that we clarify conflict for the sake of conflict, just to argue, if it's not agreed upon between the two party players, is just someone nagging at someone and someone's like, leave me alone. Now, if it's two people who love bantering, like a Ben and a Syyaa perhaps, then I think it's a invited conflict. And I think that's where it gets healthy, because now it evokes curiosity, open thought. Perhaps you might arrive at something that you never thought of before. That's why I'm into this conversation, Ben, because I like learning things. I think most people do if they don't feel insulted.
Yeah, and I get it. I feel that when it starts becoming a tax on personal character and personal moral codes or personal ideas, that's when conflict breaks down.
Yeah.
But I think that you can have a knock out, drag down, conversation about things, about an idea, and each one can be passionate about something that is completely different from the other, and have that be okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be civil. Sometimes we need to get to a point where we sit there and say, you know what, this is uncivil discourse because it needs to happen. We need to get beyond the niceties, and we need to get beyond the politically correctness, and we need to get beyond the surface stuff to actually get at the root of the problem. And sometimes, problems need to be attacked, and issues need to be attacked, and ways of doing things need to be attacked, because what worked in the past doesn't work today, or habits that have been formed are no longer relevant. And I think that there needs to be a difference between attacking the person and attacking the idea and the process and the procedure that no longer has any relevance in the world today. So I think we need to sit there and say, what is the root of the conflict? Are we just going, I hate you, you hate me, hey, fine, whatever. We're just going to have a yelling match about it? There's nothing productive about that. But if it's say, you know what, we've been doing it this way for the last 30 years and it's no longer relevant, and this is why. And having a conversation about that, even if it's at the top of our lungs, as long as we can move beyond that and be able to move towards a constructive solution that is going to move everybody forward in the end, and get beyond the animosity and the mistrust and the misgivings, there's value in that.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to stop taking everything and anything as a personal attack. And I think too many people in this world take an attack on an idea as a personal attack. And therefore, that's where we get into these politically correct, don't say anything to them because they're just going to go off. And I think that becomes an even more dangerous situation, because all of a sudden we're walking on glass all day long and nothing gets done because we don't want to upset, we don't want to upset Ben. You can't upset Ben, because if we upset Ben, then we're going to have to deal with the ramifications. Well, sometimes those ramifications need to be dealt with, because sometimes it gets to a point where if it's keeping the business or keeping situations from moving forward or moving beyond and getting better, situations need to be dealt with.
Having the hard conversation is hard.
It always is.
But you know what's funny? There's nothing to fear but fear itself. And by the way, again, I'm working through this, people. I hate conflict. Let me be very clean and clear. I am what we're talking about. I avoid conflict like the effing plague. Okay. I'm the worst for it. I'd rather just function silently. And if we're in conflict right now, Ben, I just go silent.
Yeah. And that's the most dangerous thing in the world.
And look,
because somebody, you'll go quiet. I'll assume that nothing's wrong because you're not saying anything. But in the meantime, you're stewing, and your temperature's rising, and you're getting more animosity, more mistrust, more whatever, because you're not willing to have a conversation about something that's a problem. You're just trying to bury it down and deep. And I'm not saying this is a personal attack, and maybe I am. But, that's what I'm saying, is that when we bury things, they get worse. And what 100%. They do is, because I can't read your mind. I don't know when something's wrong. If you don't tell me something's wrong, I'm not going to assume that it is. I'm not going to assume that you're angry until you tell me that you're angry. I'm not going to assume you're upset until you tell me you're upset.
You know what's funny is that I've had this conversation. There's two ways to go about this. I do think very firmly not to argue when you're in the heat of the moment.
Yes.
Meaning that's why my go-to is just to go silent, calm down. My problem, and I know I'm working through, is you do need to go back and revisit the conversation at some point.
Yes.
Right?
It's that going back and revisiting it when everybody's calm. I got no problem with that.
Yeah. It's when you never go back that's the problem.
That's
And
right.
I found a very interesting feedback I got some time ago where I was in conflict with someone and they literally said to me, "Oh, I just assume you don't care."
Mm-hmm.
And that was like an eye opener for me because I'm like, bloody hell, of course I care. And if I didn't care, and this is the other thing, if I don't truly care about someone or something, I will mouth off. I will say what I want to say because I don't give a crap about what they think about my
But how would I
response.
know?
No,
How
no,
would I
no,
know?
no,
Yeah.
no, no. What I'm trying to
Yeah.
tell you though is if I am telling you how I feel and it's like coming out and it's coming out hard and fast, it's I don't care about I don't respect your opinion of me enough to fix my behavior. And that is a weird part of like that dichotomy of things that we have to
Mm-hmm.
be careful about with conflict and being able to communicate and try to work things out because for those that do care, if I cared very deeply on something, like I
Yes.
said, I go quiet. I want to make sure the words
Mm-hmm.
that come out of my mouth are meaningful, impactful, and I mean it, right? Because there's
And,
nothing worse than to be in a conversation with someone, say some things because you can never take it back because they will
very true.
always feel. Doesn't matter if the words that you say, I didn't mean it that way, I apologize. No, they felt
Mm-hmm.
the words were wrong, but they felt where it came from, and that's hard to backtrack from,
Yes.
right? So that's where I think with what we're going
And
after
I
is
have
it's
no
interesting.
problem with counting to 10 and walking away and thinking about it and ruminating and coming back and says, you know what? Yesterday you upset me. Or yesterday I was upset about this. Can we sit down and we can talk about it? I have
Yeah.
no problem with that 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour timeout. It's when you come back to me 6 months later and use it as a weapon against me. That's when I go apoplectic. And a lot
Yeah.
of people do. A lot of people stew on stuff for weeks and months and sometimes
Years.
years. And then
It's not
all of a
healthy.
sudden, you get hit by something. You did this to me in 1985 and I hate you. Okay, it's 2024. That's almost 40 years ago. I was 15 at the time. There's nothing I can do about it. So what's the problem? But if you come back to me 72 hours later, I can actually do something about it, or at least I can actively listen and I can understand. If you come back to me 6 months to a year later, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing, and it just seems superfluous at the time. So we need to sit there and realize that there are windows for these things, and either you get over it or you deal with it.
There's gonna be we're running out on time, but I just want to say one other thing. And I know this is a Sia specific thing, but I would love anyone just do me a favor, give me a round of applause here. How many, if anybody, has been mad about something and then they walk away to cool off and then they forgot why they got mad? Like, I have had so many situations, and maybe Ben, that's another problem. I don't address it because I'm not kidding. Maybe it's the function of my ADD type brain. I forget, and so therefore, I
But then
remember
it's
I
not a
got
conflict
upset.
anymore.
I got upset about something, but I no longer remember why. So maybe it wasn't important to me, but I'm bad. I am so bad. I am probably the best person to get, if I'm going to get mad at you, like maybe I'm the best type of person to get upset because I forget. And the next thing I literally had a massive like argument with my boyfriend one evening. And the next morning I slept it off and I was like lovey dovey again. He looked at me. He's like, dude, you yelled at me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I did, didn't I? I'm so bad. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there. Anyone, round of applause if you think like me and have literally lucky recipient got out of fights because we forget. That's all I'm saying.
And here, let's take this. Let's go back to men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Men and women process things differently.
It's true.
I mean, this is overgeneralization, but I'm going to say it. How men deal with conflict, how women deal with conflict are very different ways. And
Yes.
we need to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge that and call it sexist, call it archaic, call me a Neanderthal, call me whatever you want. But science backs it up. And it's not absolute, it's not every single time, but there is science behind this. And I think we need to be cognizant of that the back to a previous conversation, the way I interpret something is not the way that you're going to interpret it. And until we actually have that conversation and say, actually, I think it's a 6, you think it's a 9. Well, wait a second here. Could you walk over to my side of the fence? Oh, yeah, it does look like a 6 from here. Thank you. Or I have to walk over to your side of the fence and say, yeah, I can see it from your point of view. You're right. It does look like a 9.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be open to having those conversations and not just assuming somebody else is wrong and crazy. Because 9 times out of 9, they're not. It's just the way they're interpreting stuff.
100. I cannot disagree, my friend.
All right, there we go. So I'm Ben.
I'm Syyaa.
And we'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bytes. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bytes.